Hey everyone, welcome to Vantage Real Talks. If you haven't joined us before, Vantage Ventures, we're an amplifier of scalable startups in West Virginia, and we're using this Real Talk series to chat with really exceptional individuals. We like to talk to them about their why, also how they got where they are. We're obsessed with entrepreneurs around here, and so we spend a lot of time trying to figure out what drives them, what are kind of the common threads between them all, and how their unique stories have really built them to succeed in a lot of different settings. So we're super excited today to have Lee Farabaugh here. She is one of my friends. She's a big part of the Core10 team, which is an amazing, very dynamic growing company. They're a resident with us at Vantage Ventures, but they also have locations in Huntington and Nashville. They're really part of this growing world of fintech and getting us all kind of up to speed with amazing software development and keeping everyone moving forward, especially in times like these. So just really excited to have you, Lee, and certainly to talk more about Core10 and your story.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. This is fun. It does feel like two friends talking, so I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's a good excuse to catch up,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, one of the things that I was so excited to talk with you about is that you clearly, Core10 is immersed in this world of tech, and y'all have some really exciting solutions for all these different partners and stakeholders that we'll talk about. And it can be really intimidating, like this idea, what is fintech? What are all of these software solutions in this just larger world? But it's really cool to know your background and how you grew up. You kind of found this pathway into tech in a really interesting way. You have a lot of art influence in your life, and there was a lot of play and kind of positive things associated with computers. So do you mind telling us a bit about kind of your background that then ended up bringing you to where you are today?
Yeah, so it's kind of a winding road. It was definitely not a straight shot to where I am today. So when I was a kid, my dad was really interested in technology and how technology could change our lives. He was a television anchorman, and I remember going to visit him at the studio, and they had big mainframes and dumb terminals, and he was just really interested in what technology was doing back in the early 80s, and brought home a IBM computer. I don't even remember what it was, but like the real floppy disks and boot in drive A and programs in drive B. And he said to me, he gave me this wonderful gift, and he said, just play with it. You can't hurt it. And so we had lots of games and word processing, and just introduced me to a really early age to what the promise was of computing. And then fast forward to when I was a teenager, my mom started her own business and bought some computer software and technology. And I kind of got into desktop publishing, which is the precursor to graphic design, and decided, oh, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to be a graphic artist. I really loved making things. But technology, that's kind of what technology was to me as a kid, was a way to make stuff. And so I've tended to use it in creative pursuits and in expression and publishing and that kind of thing. And so getting to fintech was I did some different hops. I have an undergraduate degree in fine arts, but I went back and got a master's in what's called human-computer interaction, which is basically about what things are people good at and what things are computers good at, and how do you marry that into something that makes everybody do what they do well. And then I spent some time in healthcare IT. I worked for the Centers for Disease Control, and then started a company with a few partners doing healthcare IT consulting, and then morphed into Core10. And one of the reasons that we went into financial technology is because we understood the value of having a vertical concentration in technology services, but also we had a ton of fintech expertise from our investor, Joe Maxwell of FinTop Capital, and then from our board member, Sarah Biller, the executive director of Vantage. So fintech kind of it fit us really well at Core10.
Totally.
Yeah.
There are like so many things there that you said that are really interesting and cool. First off, the fact that you're like in the 80s, your dad got his hands on a computer and said, like, have at it. You can't hurt it. I feel like at that point, like, this is a novelty and a pretty big deal. I mean, just that chance to like experiment with a computer so young is really cool.
Yeah, he bought me this program. There's a gentleman named Seymour Papert who is a professor at MIT, and he created the Lego Mindstorms, and he created this program called Logo. And it was essentially, you gave the computer little commands, and there was this turtle, and he would go across the screen. Like, you could tell him to go up so many and over so many. And my favorite was, I forget exactly what you told him, but you could get him to just wrap around the screen a bunch of times in all different colors and made these neat designs. So Logo was kind of my first foray into software development as a
That's awesome. And then to hear that your mom started her own company, so you had like tech and entrepreneurism in your blood from early.
Yeah, and she's still running it. She's 77 and she's still running her own company. So.
That's amazing. What is her company?
She's in retail.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like you probably learned a lot, getting exposed to that at a young age.
I'll tell you the thing that she taught me that was so important was the value of accounting, being able to do your own.
Oh, do your own accounting. Some people are quick to say, like, hire an accountant. I won't do it.
I'm not great at it. I'm not great at that side of the business. And so there's people in our business who are much better at that than me, but she just ingrained in me, like, understand your own books. That's really important. Understand your own books. So.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
And then, so you're growing up, all these really great different things going on, and interested in graphic design, and your, brief foray into software development. And then you go to fine art. You go to school for fine art, right? And that's, I mean, at that point, was it like an integrated program for graphic design, or was it a pure, like, just fine arts? I'm thinking paintings and art history.
That's it. Yeah, it was, so this is late 90s, and the program that I went through was like the academic fine arts, so painting, photography, sculpture, printmaking, and they had one graphic design course that I took, I think my senior year, that was starting to get integrated. I went to Wake Forest, and it's probably way different now. I mean, I've been out 20 plus years. But I concentrated in oil painting, which was a fantastic discipline. I mean, it taught me a lot. It's very difficult to make it look the way you think it ought to look. So yeah, but then the graphics stuff was more what I did on the side. I spent a summer at RISD up in Providence, Rhode Island, working with some of the graphic tools. And so that was something that I kind of had to pursue on my own, just because it wasn't present in my undergraduate experience very much. But that was the part that was just so interesting to me. And when the internet kind of came about, I'm dating myself here, that felt to me like the most exciting part of where graphic design was going, away from static print design to dynamic interactive design. That just felt super exciting and fun, and that's what I wanted to pursue.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I mean, to your point, you mentioned you kind of got into this, the precursor to UI or user experience, and the way humans interact with computers. And, I know you talked a lot about just how cool it was to your idea of creating art, but in an interactive form, which is like, I'm like thinking of you creating the spiral of the like logo across the screen. But, that's really interesting. I think, you explained, you told us about a lot of roles you've actually held. So, you got your degree in fine art. You were kind of keeping your hand on the pulse of graphic design and some of that world while you're studying fine art and upkeeping those skills. And then, but you hopped through a lot of different kind of roles, a couple different companies, but a lot of different roles across all across all of that, how have you, like, how did all of those different roles kind of come together to, create your skill set you have now and where you sit at Core10?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of my first roles that I did right outside of college was I was a front-end developer for a marketing firm. And back then, what that really meant was HTML and CSS. And there was a whole team of print designers, and they would create the mock-ups for what the web pages were supposed to look like, but it was a printout. And then my job was to turn it into HTML and make it interactive. And that was a great, experience, translating and sometimes having to argue and say, I can't make it look exactly like it looks on the piece of paper. There weren't all the options we have now for the front end. And so that was a great experience, a great learning experience. And then I also worked at a advertising firm in Birmingham, Alabama, and that company specialized in automotive. And so I got to go to Los Angeles to run a project there for Toyota and Lexus and Scion, where we were rebuilding the configurator, which is, you pick all your options on a car. And that was kind of where my ideas around usability got seeded. We had the consumer-facing front end, and then we had a back-end administrative portal that was very difficult to use, let's just say that. And I remember feeling like, surely there's a different way that we could do this. How can it be that I'm the only one who can upload all these images and create all these business rules? Surely this should be accessible for other people too. And that's where I kind of found that field of, then it was called usability, and now it's called user experience. And that was really interesting to me, just from a sense of like, how do we make things easy for people to do? How do we make it intuitive? And that's kind of what led me to graduate school. And I spent a few years being a user experience designer, and really enjoyed that too. That just felt like sort of the next level of getting to apply my passion for design, and with computer science and building things and how do people think. But ultimately, the bug that really bit me was sort of that entrepreneurial business bug. And in some ways, when I was in UX, I felt like I was solving the same problems over and over again. But in business, it is an infinite set of problems and you never for. But that's what's become so exciting to me about just all of the different aspects of running a company, some of which I'm better at than others. Operations, managing delivery teams, human resources, understanding what makes people tick, why do they want to work for you and do the thing that your company's doing, sales, account management, all of those things are interesting. And like I said, you can learn all kinds of skills as a person. If you're not good at something, you just have to work to figure out how to get better at it. And some of those I'm stronger in than others, but it's really been fascinating to learn about all those different aspects of business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is. It's endless. But okay. Yeah. And then, so how did you, you're working on UX, you get bit by the entrepreneurial bug and kind of having this super dynamic, different variables to deal with. And then walk me through how you ended up, right? You're co-founder of Core10 and how that whole, the beginning of Core10 was, and then we'll jump to kind of where y'all are today.
Sure. So Core10 was really founded to solve a real problem that those of us who founded the company were feeling, and that was the desire to do software development work in the United States for lots of different reasons, some of which is because there's headaches with going offshore, time zone and culture and things like that, and some of which was about creating jobs in the U.S. But there was this sort of typical understanding that if you were going to do software development in the U.S., it was expensive because the cost of living in the United States is high compared to foreign countries, and most of the software development talent is in the coast, and those places are even more expensive. And that's just sort of the limitation. You can do it here, but it costs a fortune. And the idea was, how can we do software development here in the US and have it not cost a fortune? There's got to be a way to do this. Aren't there lots of smart, talented, capable people in areas that are not the coasts that can and want to do this kind of work? And so that's really where the nearshore model came from. That's our term for domestic outsourcing of software development work. And like you said before, we focus exclusively in the financial technology space. And we found ourselves in Huntington, West Virginia, because our investor, Joe Maxwell, is from there, and he took us up there and said, you guys are talking about trying to find a place that has a good, strong education system, people coming out of computer science programs wanting technology jobs, a lower cost of living, a culture that is, a hardworking spirit and solving mindset. Here it is. What do you think? And Huntington absolutely fit that bill. It was an incredible place for us to put our first Nearshore Center. And that's how we discovered, really the power and beauty of West Virginia and its people, who are so smart, capable, hardworking, motivated. So that's our largest office now, is in Huntington. And we established a second center in Western Tennessee almost 2 years ago now.
That's amazing. We're so glad you found us. And that Huntington has been, such a great place to grow. And I can speak to how awesome your office space is down there. It's really, really cool. And it's like totally hit place to work. I know I was jealous. I was living down there and not working in an office nearly as cool as y'all's. But okay, so that is a really interesting model where you're like, connecting all these dots and saying, we've got places where there's really, really smart people ready to take on these jobs and kind of be part of this innovation and jump forward in technology, but are also really tied to their communities and tied to kind of where they live and really proud of that and love their life and are, the opportunity to kind of let both of those things exist together in places is really cool, and a really cool part of what, y'all are doing. That, that business model means a lot. And, it's kind of like, even though you're for profit, you have this awesome element of connectivity where you're bringing these stakeholders together, that I just think is really powerful. But in terms of like the fintech world, right? So that's kind of feels to me, it's this kind of this like bubble of what is fintech, And I think about it. I know that like I would be completely lost without the mobile banking I have on my phone, without all of my apps I have to keep my credit straight and keep me posted on where I stand with everything. I mean, I can probably count on one hand. I just haven't, I don't go to the bank that much. It's not as much, the physical space isn't as much part of my life. And so that kind of comes to my mind. But how do you, that's just my exposure. And there's this larger world of so much going on in fintech. How do you see the whole space? And then where exactly does Core10 fit into all of that?
Yeah, so those are great questions. So you could probably ask 50 people and get 50 different answers about what fintech is, but I'll tell you what it means to us, and where we're focused. It is very broad, and it's basically creating additional capabilities, rails, so to speak, for financial information to flow from financial institutions to brokerage to lending, and the ability for some of these account data to be passed amongst these different entities with their permission, of course, enabling all kinds of additional services. So to me, fintech isn't about disintermediating the banks. It's about finding ways for technology startups, like, say, somebody who can help you maximize and track your credit score, but to connect them to your financial institution so that as a consumer, you end up having this much more holistic picture of your financial life, because you might have, sort of your home hub at your financial institution, your bank, your credit union, but then you've got all these other interesting services that give you a different view into your financial life, or help you manage a specific aspect of your financial life. Maybe help you save for a car, or do something like that. And there's all kinds of aggregation services. Plaid is one of them. Yodlee is another, that make that data flow nicely, again, with your permission, between all of different entities, and give you access to all kinds of services that affect your financial life.
Yeah.
That's not a textbook definition. That would need to be edited.
No, that was like, I get it. that was a great explanation. And then, so now Core10 specifically, the piece of all of that you all work on, and help me, you're going to have to edit me here, but is partnering with different startups or institutions or different groups that want to kind of make robust and help those things flow, and then you're helping them build that infrastructure, or how do you all think about it?
Yes, so we focus in two main areas. One is API integration, and probably everybody in your audience knows what that is, but just in case, that's application programming interface, and it's pipes and valves for data to flow. It's what kind of data can be pulled and pushed from different applications, and we help our customers build APIs so that they can connect to other applications. We help them create API connections wherever they need them. We can build API gateways, which are sort of hubs with lots of different ports, so to speak, for data to flow. That process and practice of connecting the financial world through APIs is one where that's kind of our sweet spot. And we work with some specific partners. I mentioned Plaid. Constellation Digital Partners is another one that's creating digital banking marketplace and platform for credit unions. So we work with lots of different partners where we understand their stack very well. And then anyone they want to connect with, or anyone that wants to connect with them, we have expertise in those stacks and can help make that happen quickly and easily. So that's one piece. And then typically we're mostly focused around banking and lending. We've done also some work with capital markets, wealth management, things like that, but banking and lending is really sort of where we're most focused. And then we work with a lot of fintech SaaS companies, and these are what we call hypergrowth SaaS companies, where they've hit their stride, sales are hot, lots of new clients coming in, and they cannot get them onboarded and implemented fast enough. And they can bring in our team of implementation analysts and experts to migrate data, configure systems, create reports, help kind of free up that backlog of clients waiting to be onboarded, because as soon as the client is onboarded, they start paying for the service. So our clients really want to make sure that flow is happening smoothly and it's done really well. It's done by people who have good customer-facing skills, which our teams in West Virginia and Western Tennessee do. So that's kind of where we are in the space.
Yeah, that's super helpful, by the way, explanation. And I think maybe everyone in the audience maybe has heard API, but I know myself, I feel like I can, again, you can get a different definition over and over again. And it's always good to hear new ways to think about it, because it's a complex idea. But, I'm interested, your point on really good, customer facing skills, and your all's focus clearly, and your background in the South, it sounds like you Tennessee, North Carolina, West Virginia, Appalachia, the South, or, this kind of regional area certainly is a place where, we pride ourselves on that community spirit, that neighborly, some warm hospitality. People will help you out, will stop their car on the side of the road. And I'm curious how having, how it's gone, I guess, developing these kind of tech hubs in Huntington, now a little bit in Tennessee, and how it's impacted your business to be to be working with through this tech culture, but with that really strong kind of cultural element that's, can be so unique and special about Appalachia or the South, and just your experience with that.
Yeah. Well, so what's really interesting, you kind of mentioned this with Huntington. Huntington has always had lots of smart, talented people coming out of Marshall and Mount West and, Huntington natives that go to WVU, and come back home. But they've typically found that in order to get a job in technology, they had to go somewhere else. And so much of what we're about is about giving them the opportunity to have that technology career and move up a technology career ladder, but not have to leave home. And so much of it is about that community spirit that exists in West Virginia and Western Tennessee. That's about the place where you grew up, the place where your family is, those family ties being really important. And I'm a Southerner. I was born in Alabama, raised in North Carolina. And so it's almost like you're asking me about something that's so ingrained that it's hard to even talk about. But I think that's where, that spirit really comes through, that our clients love, especially our customer-facing members of those teams with the SaaS companies. In fact, one of our team members was voted Employee of the Month at one of our clients. Because number one, that says a ton about our client, that they embrace our team as if they were their own.
Absolutely.
But two, that customer-focused mentality has clearly permeated our team, and made them shine, even in an outsourced role. So,
yeah, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
an awesome story. Okay, I want to be respectful. We're getting a bunch of questions in through the live stream, so
Okay.
I'm gonna throw a couple at you. One was, are there any trends in UI that you're really excited about?
Oh, gosh. Well, so can I caveat that by saying I've been out of being a UI practitioner for a while. So this may sound a little dated. I've had some conversations recently with people about mobile technology, and we used to have all of these conversations about, should we build a mobile app? Should it be a hybrid or a native mobile app, a hybrid app, a web app? And anymore, that feels like that's not even a conversation that we have anymore, that everything is so seamless from our computers to our tablets to our phones. It used to be we had to be so prescriptive about that. And we do so much more on our phones than I think we ever thought possible. Sometimes entire interactions with companies are just through our phone. So that's one that I would say is exciting. I have to probably think about that a little more. I haven't had on in a while that I've really thought about that. So.
Totally. Okay, here's another interesting one, and kind of similar. Everyone's really excited about this UX UI background. But what lessons did you learn about user experience and those kind of things during your time at the agency that then can be applied now to fintech and financial services?
Okay. Oh, that's great. Well, I would go back to, and I mentioned it before, but I can say it again. It's sort of, if I had to sum up my graduate experience in human-computer action in one idea, it's that human beings are good at a certain set of things. And they typically have to do more with fuzzy logic and pattern matching and recognizing sort of like needles in a haystack. And computers are good at a whole different set of things. And that typically has to do with rapid computation and that kind of thing. Like, asking a human being to add tons of numbers, quickly in their mind, most of them can't do it. But if you can design a system so that everybody's doing what they're good at, that's when the cognitive load on the human reduces way down. And that's when the experience is so much more enjoyable. And so much of what I see in financial services these days is about member experience for credit unions or customer experience for banks, and making that experience seamless and making it easy for them to do things. And so I would just say that one of the things I learned was just reducing barriers everywhere you can reduce reducing friction. And that's, you can do that on the back end through APIs. You can do it on the front end through a very intelligent interface. But I would say helping people do what they do best and reducing friction to get them there would be probably some of the biggest lessons I've learned. And another big one of my professors used to always say this. She would say, everything is trade-offs. There's no perfect scenario. And I apply that to life too. I mean, everything in life is trade-offs, right? So if whatever you're doing in building a system, you're gaining something over here and you're borrowing something over here. But balancing those trade-offs into something that makes sense, that's a healthy exercise to embark on.
Totally. Well, it's so funny you say that, because when you were talking about the, why, user experience, reducing these barriers and letting people's minds focus on the things they're good at and kind of reduce that load, I'm like, wow, I need that filter applied to every element of my life. I want someone to come like user experience, my whole everything, like grocery shopping. And I mean, we're getting there kind of, right? Where you're seeing it applied across so many elements of our life and an accelerated rate with, the current times and everything COVID has brought us. So that's just really, really interesting. And I feel like only more applicable every day. But okay, there's a few more really good ones. Someone asked, what role do you see fintech playing in the economy post-COVID-19? Do you think there will be more opportunities?
So what role in a fintech economy? Did I hear you right?
Sorry, yeah. Well, what role do you see fintech playing in the kind of as COVID-19 has happened, and then after, as we get through it, what role do you see fintech playing?
Yeah, so I mean, I see it just getting hotter and hotter because this crisis has taught us just how much we can do ourselves and using our devices. People have had to figure out how to do all kinds of transactional things without touching each other or having cash or, being in the same physical location. So I think we're just going to see more and more and more. And if a financial institution did not have a significant digital presence or digital tools for their customers or members, they're scrambling at this point to get there because that's the new normal. Absolutely.
And that brings up another question I wanted to ask you about. So West Virginia recently has passed the FinTech Sandbox legislation, which is, really exciting. And, Vantage got to do a bit of work around that, but it is a huge kind of group effort across, different institutions and the state's willingness to really think about how we keep pushing the economy forward and West Virginia to the kind of cutting edge. What is, in your mind, what does that legislation or that idea of a sandbox, how does it apply to you? And from your perspective, what kind of opportunity does that bring to West Virginia?
Yeah, well, you talk about reducing barriers. I mean, I think that's exactly what a FinTech Sandbox is all about. It's reducing barriers for entrepreneurs. It's reducing barriers for capital to flow. It's reducing barriers for people to connect to each other and share interesting ideas. And I think that it's going to be a wonderful thing. For us, more FinTech opportunity and more entrepreneurial activity that's happening in the state is exciting for us because we can say to those people building new technologies, hey, if you need help and you want to stay in state, we have a great option for you with FinTech expertise, right there in the state on a services basis. So yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing. I'm super proud of everybody who fought hard for this for the state. And I think it just goes to show, what you said, it was the state, Core10, just the state was so willing to hear our ideas and invest time and money in us. That's made our decision to come to West Virginia feel like it was absolutely the right one. And I think the Sandbox will have that same feel as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. It is. It's really exciting, and it just feels like it's all this momentum is, and y'all have really, Core10 has really kind of forged another path, and that's really, really exciting. And I have one last question for you. Just what's, back to your entrepreneurial hat, what's one thing that entrepreneurs should know about building a company from the ground up? Whether that's advice you have, or just a, key tenet you've always held.
Well, I mean, I think it's what I love about building companies, but it's just not easy. It can be tough. It can be a slog. It can be time. Stick-with-itedness is a key characteristic that's really important for an entrepreneur to have. There's a book that I read a little while ago by a gentleman named Seth Godin, and it's called The Dip. And it's about when to quit and when to realize that you're just in a dip. And I think entrepreneurs have to hold on through the dips, because the highs are great, but it's a lot of hard work, and you've got to really believe.
Totally.
to keep you going.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And the people, I feel like, right, the people around you can make such a difference there too. I think talking with you today, and talking with, it just reminds you, you're in that moment, you're in that dip, and then you happen to have a chat with someone who's starting an amazing company and is really, making good things happen and pushing the world forward, and you're just like inspired all over again. And it's like, I feel like everyone's kind of pulling each other through those moments, and it becomes important now when we're all doing it virtually, but it's been pretty amazing to see that flow still happen.
Well, I think that's a really important point. So maybe here's some advice that's more positive. You're right about the people, that just the team, collaboration, sharing ideas. If you have a stellar team that you're a part of, that solves so many issues. That makes the ride really enjoyable. And it's interesting. Last week I was on the coffee hour with you and Grant Wiley from Visio, and just VPO. Sorry, yeah, VPO. Just listening to him, his attitude, his way of approaching life, it just left me inspired. And so, yeah, that collaboration, community, networking with other people in the same boat is tremendously uplifting.
Yeah. Well, and it's been amazing to have, you be part of those conversations too, because it is just such an awesome example and role model for innovative models and how we can really kind of do well and do good all at the same time. And I just think that's really amazing, and really appreciate getting a chance to chat with you today about all of this. So I'm done grilling you on things. If you have anything else you'd like to leave folks with, otherwise, I'm sure, folks were asking some questions in the comments. If I didn't reach them all, Lee, you're welcome to, comment and answer anything you'd like. I know you mentioned a book. We'll make sure to link that. We're starting up a cool virtual library for all the resources people suggest on here. But just thank you so much for joining and talking with the whole community today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be part of the team. So thanks.
Awesome. Well, have a great day.
Okay, you too, Kelsey. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.